We are in the second half of our apologetic study. Hello, Joan! Where we are focusing not on articulated arguments in defense of the faith, but lives lived as witness to the faith. And last week, we looked at Polycarp, who at 86 years old defended his faith, would not declare Caesar to be Lord, and suffered various attempts at killing him, but finally he was martyred. But we did see with Polycarp a pattern of life that he exhibited as he was being chased down. He was arrested and offered the soldiers who came to get him a meal and hospitality, and he prayed for an hour to 2 hours for everybody, small or great, whom he had ever known. And so we assume those were practices that led him to be able at age 86 to withstand the threats that were made to get him to deny Christ. This week we have one of my little heroes. He wasn't this little, but Charlotte bought me a Father Damien. Yep. Be careful with him. Yeah, she ordered it from Hawaii. And we'll show you his picture. His apologetic life, if you will, was that he joined in the suffering of the least of these for an extended period of time. He didn't have to, but he is known as the apostle to the lepers. He is, according to a poll taken by the Belgian press in 2005, the greatest Belgian. We will see in his life story that is where he is from, though his fame did not arise in Belgium, but halfway around the world in Hawaii, where if you go to the State House, you will see that modern sculpture of him by Marisol Escobar. That same sculpture, or at least a identical copy, is in Statuary Hall in the United States Capitol, where every state gets 2 representatives. And from Hawaii, it is the most famous Belgian, which is interesting, and King Kamehameha, who unified the Hawaiian Empire, if you will. So, pretty interesting combination. All right, so with respect to his life. Okay, he's born in 1840 in a town in Belgium. That is, you are seeing a picture of his childhood home. His name was actually De Wooster. Yeah, he was born a De Wooster. We'll see that when he takes his holy orders, he takes a new name. And on Christmas Day in 1858, and I love this story about him, he's decided that he wants to follow his favorite brother into the priesthood. But he is the younger brother. They own an estate. They do farming. The older brother's already committed to the priesthood. And so Damien knows that his parents are going to want him to stay home and take care of the farm. And he does what I call plays the God card. For those, any of you who have been involved in committees to call a pastor, and then as I was, and the pastor leaves, and you say, what's the problem? What's the best answer? God is calling me elsewhere. Can't argue with that. There's usually more to it than that, but okay. So here's what he does. He writes his parents, "Most beloved parents, I ask you once more, whether you would be content about this matter, because without your approval I would not dare to enter into the priesthood, since it is God's commandment to obey your parents in your years of reason as well as in your childhood years. Very respectful, yes? Yeah. But in forbidding your child to follow God's will in choosing a state of life, you would show yourself to be very ungrateful to God, who could punish you for it in a terrible way. This guy, he's not afraid. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So he enters the congregation of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary as a postulant. He's seeking admission to the order. He receives his habit. He is allowed into the order. He takes it as Brother Damien, and no one knows quite whether that was his choice or just what was given to him. During his studies, he heard, yes, John?
What's the significance of Damien?
We don't, that's again, nobody knows. Yeah, I don't think there wasn't a Pope Damien. Usually he might take it in honor of somebody, but at best I could tell there was no record of why Damien, who gave it to him, or what the significance is. But a good question. So while he's there, a bishop from Tahiti comes to speak about the needs of the mission in Polynesia. And Damien develops a passion to lead a missionary life. No parish priesthood for him. This is his brother. And you can see God's hand in all of this. One, he's already played that card with his parents. But here his brother is ordered to join a mission in Hawaii, but he contracts typhus. And guess what? Damien says, send me. He was not yet fully a priest. So there he is. He heads off to Hawaii on the R.W. Wood, sets sail for Bremerhaven, Germany, and while he is on the high seas, he studies English. After a 5-month nonstop voyage, that'll get you some English. He disembarks in Honolulu, and he immerses himself in the language and customs of the Hawaiians, as a good missionary should. He is finally ordained as Father Damien at the Cathedral of Our Lady of Peace in Honolulu. This is a description of him, which I thought you couldn't really put a picture there. I thought you just ought to see how he's evaluated. Damien was not an intellectual, so theological studies were not his thing, but a man of action. He started out as a traditional Western missionary on the Big Island, then later on Maui, and like all Europeans of the time, regarded the Hawaiians as an immoral, uncivilized, superstitious people, kind of like Native Americans were viewed by the first white settlers here. His aim was to save as many lost souls as he could. He was zealous to convert, and he traveled extensively to do that. If asked where he lived, Damien would point to his horse's saddle and say, "That's where I live." So he was an itinerant missionary in Hawaii. Guess there are worse places to do that. He built a number of chapels. He really did. He was a builder, and it earned him the nickname of the Carpenter Priest. This I got from a pamphlet that I got at the church that holds the crypt in which he's buried in Leuven, Belgium. So this was a pamphlet that the Congregation of the Sacred Hearts published, and that's the way they described him. That, if you want to read more about, I put the picture of this book there. If you want to read in depth about Father Damien, that would be the book to read. The Spirit of Father Damien by Jan de Volder. Like most, and this is what de Volder writes, like most Catholic missionaries of the time, he saw his mission in intense competition with that of the Protestant heretics. So not only are we viewing the natives as uncivilized, but we don't want them to be civilized by the Protestants. At the end of our story today, you are going to see a really disgusting conflict between Catholic and Protestant that our hero, Robert Louis Stevenson of Treasure Island and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde fame, will come to the rescue. So I put that in the back of your mind. But always keep in mind, this is an issue. Who's going to be the top dog when it comes to missions? Are we going to make them Protestants or Catholics? So, he didn't like the fact that Protestants did not kneel while praying. Think of that as you're in church today. And instead of bread for communion, they gave the local taro root and might even give water instead of wine. Heaven forbid, right? Damien thought that with relentless dedication, he could win most inhabitants for his church. He noted the flaws of the Protestant missionaries. They let anyone preach, even the women. Take that with you to church today. And charged money for attending services. Now that I'm happy nobody does. Once they become very rich, most of them resign and go into business, he wrote. And we're going to see some of this. All right. Now, we have a problem with leprosy in the Hawaiian Islands. In the 1860s, it spread rapidly through the islands. The causes of the disease were not known, but it was contagious and incurable. That much they knew. In 1866, the Board of Health proposed that the peninsula on Molokai become a quarantine site. The next slide I'm going to show you will show you just how effective a quarantine site it was. I teach a Bible study at Corinthia. Hank, my friend here, is in it on Monday afternoons, and one of our regular attendees, Dr. Max, has been to Molokai, and he said, "You're darn right. Nowhere to go from where the leper colony was." So anyway, those who contracted the disease were asked to turn themselves in or were tracked down. Exile was not only the letter of the law, it was also considered an act of citizenship. Get out of town and don't infect other people. In 1873, the editor of a major newspaper in Hawaii wrote about the leper colony on Molokai and said, "It is a terrible place where people lie rotting away, a place full of death and manslaughter, drunkenness, prostitution, and rape, a place that could use a brave missionary." And as I read that description, I think of a couple of things. The big thing is there's no hope. So if somebody's got a blanket that you like, kill them. You're not going anywhere. They're not going to do anything to you. Have wanton sex. Again, you're not going to infect anybody. Everybody's already infected. I think you've seen the movie Ben-Hur, surely, where he goes after he has escaped his enslavement, finds out his mother and sister have been put in there, basically a big hole in the ground leper colony. And that's the same sense that you get of hopelessness and shame. So this peninsula, as I was mentioning, was a well-chosen place of isolation. Remember, it's an island, so on three sides it's surrounded by the ocean, and then you'll see a cliff. So you're not going anywhere. You actually can, and Damien did occasionally, make his way over the cliff. But that was the leper colony. Down there by the water goes all the way around, and the only place that it isn't is this cliff. They need a missionary there, according to the newspaper. Damien hears the Bishop of Honolulu speak about the wretched conditions in the leper colony, and there's no permanent priest there. They have been sending people in and out, but nobody wants to stay for long. Maigret, the bishop, thinks it's risky, so he's only doing them on 3-month rotations. Damien is one of 4 volunteers and is the first to go. He's 33 years old when he does this. And we're going to see he decides to stay. Don't send anybody to relieve me. I'm going to stay here. So in May of 1873, he lands on Molokai and asks to remain the permanent priest there. In his first month, he goes back to Honolulu twice to make confession and consult with his superiors. You would think that would be a good thing, one, mandatory for Catholics. There's nobody for him to give his confession to on Molokai. And he's undertaken a major task. You'd think he'd want to talk to his boss about that. The problem is he's breaking quarantine when he does that. So he's forbidden from leaving Molokai ever again. He will, as he is dying, return to Honolulu because a Japanese leprologist has come up with some herbal treatment that might help, and they let him do that. But for more than half of his 16 years on Molokai, he has no priestly companionship. They will send assistants from time to time. There are about 500 lepers on Molokai when he got there. Many were in the final stages, their hands, feet, faces horribly marred. They suffered about 150 to 200 deaths per year, but they kept getting replenished from the mainland. Damien writes this: "Many a time in fulfilling my priestly duties at their domiciles, I have been obliged not only to close my nostrils, but to remain outside to breathe fresh air. As an antidote to counteract the bad smell, I got myself accustomed to the use of tobacco, whereupon the smell of the pipe preserved me somewhat from carrying in my clothes the obnoxious odor of our lepers." A cigar would have probably done better, but pipes were more popular. I'm giving you here, when you hear lepers, you think of the biblical teachings, and you think also of Jesus. So I've given you both. From Leviticus, the leprous person who has the disease shall wear torn clothes, let the hair of his head hang loose, so that everybody will know he's got leprosy, shall cover his upper lip and cry out, "Unclean, unclean." He shall remain unclean as long as he has the disease. He is unclean. He shall live alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. That verse was cited by the Hawaiian authorities in saying, send these people to Molokai. And then we read the story of Jesus in Luke. While he was in one of the cities, there came a man full of leprosy. And when he saw Jesus, he fell on his face and begged him, "Lord, if you will, you can make me clean." And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him. That, I'm going to suggest to you, is the major witness of Jesus here. We know he can heal him, but he touches him. He says, "I will be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him, and he charged him to tell no one, but to go and show yourself to the priest and make an offering for your cleansing, as Moses commanded, for a proof to them. But now even more the report about him went abroad, and great crowds gathered to hear him and to be healed of their infirmities. But he would withdraw to desolate places and pray. So this was Jesus's model for ministering to lepers. So what does Damien do? He touches them. He touches the incurable to baptize them, to give them communion, to administer the last sacraments to the dying, and to bury them. all of which would have made him Old Testament mega unclean. He embraces the sick, eats with them from the same pot, even shares that pipe with them. And this will not surprise you. He is going to contract leprosy. But even before he does, he speaks of his community as we lepers when he's writing to his superiors. Damien writes to his superior general, "They are repugnant to look at, but they also have a soul, redeemed at the price of the precious blood of our divine Savior. He too, in his divine love, consoled lepers. If I cannot heal them as he could, at least I can offer them comfort." That, to me, is the key to his, what I'll call, apologetic life. He says, I'm not Jesus, I'm just a human, but I can do what any human can do, which is to comfort these people. And he does a lot else. Okay, he's not only comforting them spiritually, but also physically. What he saw, and this is what really moved him, the despair, idleness, drunkenness, and unrestrained lifestyle that had defined this living graveyard. I think here in our prisons, in the maximum security area, these guys have nothing to lose. That's why they are generally isolated from one another. They have nothing to fear. They already have life sentences. I remember being in a prison in French Robertson Unit, Abilene, Amarillo, one of those places. And the guard, I was in the administrative segregation, the solitary part, and the guard did not see me on my knees, which was the only way to communicate with these guys. These are not bars like you see in the Wild Wild West. These are solid steel doors with little like mail slots to put their food in. And when they let them out for 1 hour of exercise per day in a little cage like a hamster, they have to put their hands out and have them handcuffed. And then they'll open the door and let them out. But anyway, the officer, I was on my knees with this guy so we could talk through the slot. He didn't see me. And he opened the door for a guy down the hall to go get his exercise. Guy wanders down the hall, sees me there, I see him. We both know that I'm not supposed to be there while he's out. And they didn't need to restrain him because he was just going from his cell to the exercise cage. He wasn't going to be in contact with anybody, he thought. And this is the scary part, folks. This is why I bring up this story. He looks at me, I look at him. He says, "You don't need to be worried." I said, "Well, I'm not particularly." He says, "Now, if you had a uniform on, you'd need to be worried." He would have killed a guard. But he wasn't going to kill. The reason they are protective, and he turned out to be in the Aryan Brotherhood, which is a horrible thing. You can share Christ with a member of the Aryan Brotherhood, but he thinks he's already got what he needs. But anyway, they're respectful of the other inmates who are happy to have us there, the only people they see, and so he wasn't going to do anything to me. But he said, if he had a uniform on, it'd be a different story. Again, nothing really to live for. But he transforms this community of lepers into a vibrant community centered on Christ. He facilitates food. I mean, talk about the logistics. You got to get food and water for the mainland, and at the high point, they're up to 1,000 inhabitants. He gets clean clothing. That he was able to do by, of course, appealing to churches like ours and saying, hey, we need clothes, and he got plenty of them. He actually, I told you, he was the carpenter priest, built houses, churches, orphanage, and schools. Over 300 buildings in all on Molokai. And again, through contacts on the mainland, got medicine and other treatments that the people needed. So he's taking care of all aspects of their needs. And there he is among his lepers. He's the only guy with a priest outfit on. And he's also the oldest. Right there, front row, center, pretty much. This, I will apologize in advance. When I get to the next slide, I will have a hard time reading it. It's one of the most beautiful testimonies to the work of a Christian I've ever read. There is Princess, later Queen Liliuokalani. You've probably heard of her in various movies about the Hawaiian Islands. She comes to Molokai, and there is a civil overseer of Molokai. He doesn't live there. But Damien and this fellow thought to spare her a visit to the hospital. Princess, you're a princess. You don't need this. But she insisted on making it. She was not prepared for the sight of the swollen and mutilated faces staring at her from their small mats on the wooden floor. She braced herself and tried to smile at a leper with an empty eye socket and swollen earlobes reaching to his shoulders. Remember, these are the people Damien's with every day. When she spoke with a severely deformed and crippled girl, and a lot of these you saw in that picture were young people, her eyes filled with tears, the Hawaiian press reported in great detail and in lyrical words on the emotional royal visit. Now that is something in itself for Princess Liliuokalani to do. And here is what she writes to Damien when she gets back to Honolulu. I will try to keep my voice strong. Reverend Sir, it is my desire to express to you my great appreciation of your heroic and self-denying labors among the most unfortunate of the subjects of this realm, and in some public manner to testify, here's our apologetic, to testify to the fidelity and patient loving care with which you labor for the physical and spiritual good of those who are necessarily shut off from the tender ministrations of relatives and friends. I am aware that your labors and sacrifices are dictated solely by a desire to benefit your unfortunate fellow men, and that you look for your reward and inspiration to the divine Father and ruler of us all. Nevertheless, in furtherance of my desire, I ask you, Reverend Father, to accept the order of Knight Commander of the Royal Order of Kalakaua, the highest honor in the kingdom, in testimony of my sincere appreciation of your efforts in alleviating the distresses and mitigating in many ways the sorrows of the unfortunate lepers of Kalawau, that's the largest village in Molokai, as I had occasion to observe on my recent visit to that place. I am your friend, Liliuokalani, Regent. A letter from the princess. Now we're going to coming to the last stage of his life. There you can see he has leprosy. That is maybe one of the best known photographs of him. So he writes to his brother, I can no longer conceal from you that I too am being threatened by a disease that is worse yet than consumption, tuberculosis. I have lived almost 12 years among the lepers. Leprosy is a contagious disease. I think I cannot complain about the visible protection that God has given me. The Holy Virgin and Saint Joseph also have something to do with it, because I am really still as strong and robust as when you saw me depart in 1863. With the exception of my left foot, which has lost all feeling for the past 3 years. I mean, this guy, I'm doing great, except I can't feel anything in my left foot for the last 3 years. It is deceptive venom that threatens to poison my entire body. And then he writes to a friend, those microbes have finally settled themselves in my left leg and my ear, and an eyebrow begins to fall. I expect to have my face soon disfigured. Having no doubt myself of the true character of my disease, he's seen it day in and day out, I feel calm, resigned, and happier among my people. Already God knows what is best for my own sanctification, and with that conviction I say daily, a good your will be done. And there he is as he is dying. On the first day of Holy Week, he says, the Lord is calling me to celebrate Easter with him. He dies that day and is buried on Molokai. In 1936, his body is exhumed and returned to Leuven, his hometown in Belgium. In 1995, a relic, his right hand, is given to the Sacred Heart's congregation and reinterred on Molokai. So they have a piece of him, as they should if you consider these things significant. There it is. If you go to Molokai, there you will see the shrine of Father Damien. And there is the church that I wandered around Leuven to find. It is not a big, highly advertised in the guidebooks kind of thing. But that is St. Anthony's Chapel in Leuven. That is the interior. You can see the memories of Father Damien displayed in the church itself. There's a statue, there's a banner. And then you go downstairs. And that's where I sat for some time, in the crypt of Father Damien in St. Anthony's Chapel in Leuven. Very peaceful place. And then, so you don't get the wrong impression, I left there and had a couple of good Belgian beers nearby. They're the best, by the way. Let's remind ourselves, he dies in 1889. Are y'all ready to make him a saint? I am. I mean, we don't in our church tradition, but if you were of a tradition that did, yeah, hey, there's an idea. Okay, but it takes a while. The cause of Father Damien is formally introduced for the seeking of sainthood. He is declared venerable by Pope Paul VI in 1977, and then I find this particularly, well, yes.
What's venerable mean? Eligible?
He's good enough to be further considered.
And what's his miracle?
You're gonna find out, I think. You have to have two, and I think they were both by intercession, people calling upon Father Damien. I don't think it was anything he physically did. I forget if I think there's reference to it in here because it does take two of them. But I think this is significant. In 1984, Mother Teresa, and there she is with John Paul, she asked for a saint to enable her congregation to continue its work of love and healing. She, as we know, is also an apostle of the lepers, and she says it would really be good to have a role model, someone they could look up to who has cared for people like them. Father Damien could be that saint, she tells John Paul. Our lepers and each one throughout the world beg you for this gift. Please, Pope, make Damien a saint. A saint and a martyr of charity and a beautiful example of obedience to us religious. Oh, venerable me, you're on your way, and then you're beatified, and then if you make it, you're a saint. Oh, here you go, Keith. Pope John Paul approves Damien for beatification. That's the next step after being declared venerable, based on the miraculous cure of a Sacred Heart's sister. He didn't cure her, he's dead, but he was invoked. He is beatified, but he's only got one miracle, and there is a second one, and I don't know what it is, accepted by Pope Benedict XVI. There is Benedict with his rather modern portrait of Father Damien. He is canonized in 2009 and becomes Saint Damien. So, perhaps you are wondering, why did it take 120 years for him to be canonized? And the simple answer is he probably would have had a beer or two with me. Remember, he was described not as an intellectual, but somebody that liked to get his hands dirty. And sometimes those people are not who folks in the more genteel folks revere. And we're going to see that. So already during his lifetime, Damien de Veuster enjoyed in large parts of the world renown for holiness, because those people he's soliciting blankets and medicine from, they're telling his story. But those who had known him up close were less sure. People who were spent a lot of personal time with him. Without doubt, he was heroic, but holy? And here we have what is known as the Hyde-Stevenson controversy. And I'm going to read to you the Reverend, these are both Presbyterians, I'm sad on the one hand to say, and happy on the other hand to say. I'm going to let you read, I'll read it, but the letter that Dr. Hyde, who is not the model for the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde fellow, he had already written that. If you've been to Edinburgh, you can eat in Deacon Brodie's pub and drink beer too. And Deacon Brodie was the model for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He was a minister who by night was not a minister. Yeah, so he was well known as a rapscallion of a man of the cloth. But be that as it may, we're going to read the letter of Dr. Hyde to a friend, which he never intended to be published. And I'm going to see if you can spot what you think some of the motives are. Here is the Reverend C.M. Hyde. Nice picture of him, very holy looking person. Congregationalist, which is generally Presbyterian in background. Came to Hawaii in 1877. He did things. He started schools to educate and train people in Hawaii. He's not on Molokai. He's on the Big Island. And this private correspondence about Father Damien sparked a heated rebuke from Robert Louis Stevenson, as we will see. There is Robert Louis Stevenson. Folks been to St. Giles Church on the Royal Mile in Edinburgh? You will have seen that. It's by Augustus St. Gaudens, the great American sculptor, and it resides in St. Giles. We know Stevenson as a novelist, poet, and travel writer. Treasure Island, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This bronze relief is in St. Giles, really at the high point of the royal, well, not the high point, that would be the castle, but there it is. So, in other words, he's a bigger deal than Reverend Hyde. Let's read this letter and see what we think. He's writing to a friend who apparently has said, tell me, you're in Hawaii, tell me about this Father Damien fellow. Sounds like quite something. In answer to your inquiries about Father Damien, I can only reply that we who knew the man are surprised of the extravagant newspaper laudations, as if he was a most saintly philanthropist. The simple truth is he was a coarse, dirty man, headstrong and bigoted. He didn't like Protestants. He was not sent to Molokai, but went there without orders. Not true. He volunteered. Did not stay at the leper settlement before he became one himself. That's not true. But circulated freely over the whole island. Less than half the island is devoted to the lepers, but it's the part that you can't leave very easily. And he came often to Honolulu. We know that is absolutely false. He had no hand in the reforms and improvements inaugurated, which were the works of our Board of Health, as occasion required and many means were provided. He was not a pure man in his relations with women, and the leprosy of which he died should be attributed to his vices and carelessness. Others have done much more for the lepers. Our own ministers, the government physicians, and so forth, but never with the Catholic idea of meriting eternal life. All right, friends, what's going on here? You've learned enough about Damien, I think, to know that some of this is just scurrilous, scandalous, untrue stuff. What's eating the Reverend Dr. Hyde? Jealousy would be the number one. Oh man, I can't believe that the newspapers are writing about this guy and not me. Okay?
Is he also viewing Catholics as heretics?
Absolutely. And we are the ones who have ministered faithfully and successfully. They're only doing it as earning their eternal life. Damien was certainly doing it the hard way, if that's what he was doing there for 16 years. So I think there's absolute personal jealousy. I think that is a sign of the competition between Protestant and Catholic. That is one of the great things that has happened in the church. The first fellow we studied several weeks ago, Chuck Colson, joined with major Catholic leaders in the 90s to write a book, Evangelicals and Catholics Together, the point of which is we are part of the same Christian community, and there is so much more that connects us than which separates us. And so we need to work together, and we do in so many things. But yes, others have done much for the lepers. None of them went and lived with them. And as you can see, somebody with the skill of Robert Louis Stevenson is going to have a field day with this. And I'm not giving you anywhere near all of it. It's public. You can go online and look it up and read his response. It's about 20 pages. He writes to Hyde and says, "Your letter to the Reverend H.B. Gage is a document which in my sight, if you had filled me with bread when I was starving, if you had sat up to nurse my father when he lay a-dying, would yet absolve me from the bonds of gratitude." I wouldn't thank you if you had done all those things for me, given what you've written. If I have at all learned the trade of using words, which he has, to convey truth and to arouse emotions, you have at last furnished me with a subject. For it is in the interest of all mankind and the cause of public decency in every quarter of the world, not only that Damien should be righted, but that you and your letter should be displayed at length in their true colors to the public eye. He is outing him. That you are, he's describing who Hyde must be. You are one of those who have an eye for faults and failures. You take pleasure to find and publish them, and having found them, you make haste to forget the overvailing virtues and the real success which had alone introduced them to your knowledge. You never would have known about this guy. You never would have been able to nitpick his coarseness and dirtiness, if you will, if he hadn't done such wonderful things that he came to your attention. It is a dangerous frame of mind. That you may understand how dangerous and into what a situation it has already brought you, we will, if you please, go hand in hand. He's going to go point by point through the different phrases of your letter and candidly examine each from the point of view of its truth, its appositeness, and its charity. And I'm not going to go through all of them. And in the regular print are the words of Hyde. Damien was coarse. Stevenson writes, it's very possible. You make us sorry for the lepers who had only a coarse old peasant for their friend and father. But you who were so refined, why were you not there to clear them with the lights of to cheer them with the lights of culture? Damien was dirty. He was. Think of the poor lepers annoyed with this dirty comrade, but the clean Dr. Hyde was at his food in a fine house. Damien was headstrong. I believe you were right again, and I thank God for his strong head and heart. Damien was not sent to Molokai, but went there without orders. He said, and I said, that's absolutely false. Stephen's right. Is this a misreading? Or do you really mean the words for blame? I have heard Christ in the pulpits of our church held up for imitation on the ground that his sacrifice was voluntary, just like Damien's. Does Dr. Hyde think otherwise? You can see why I love this story. Nothing, and Mother Teresa, even when she, after her death, letters were published that showed she suffered from Great Depression. People jumped over that. Chuck Colson wrote a piece of, what do you expect? Look at the life she has lived. Of course she was depressed. It's the human condition. And so I love that Stevenson really came to his defense. Yeah.
Where was Stevenson in his faith? Was he a Catholic, Protestant?
He was a Presbyterian, but not, he said, in fact, in the earlier part of the letter to Hyde, he says, you and I share the same religious background. He was not super active, but he couldn't stand this. All right.
Where did you learn about Dr. Damien or St. Damien?
Oh, everybody. It was worldwide. I mean, his notoriety was indeed worldwide. Because by the end of the 19th century, newspapers are happening. And money, supplies, all that's being raised all over the place. So, yeah.
Thank you for you sharing us about Dr. Father Damien was Japanese immigrant. He really helped Japanese immigrant too.
Okay. In Hawaii.
In Hawaii.
And Coco here is going to be our special guest lecturer next week. Next week's hero, who absolutely represented his faith to the bitter end, Maximilian Kolbe, established missions in Nagasaki, where Coco is from, died in Auschwitz. And that's another one of those stories that the ending is well known, but the fact that this guy lived a life that you will not believe, the things he did before he ever got to Auschwitz. But that's next week. So what other thoughts about Father Damien?
Well, I can tell I was influenced by missionaries. And my hometown is fully influenced by Catholic. So Catholic came to our hometown 15th
Yeah, they were early.
centuries.
Yeah, 16th century.
Protestant missionary came 19th centuries.
Yeah.
So we Japanese knew what kind of a missionary Catholic does. And then now we can see Protestant missionary does. There is so much conflict to us. And then they are not friendly to each other. Catholic missionary or Protestant missionaries are not so friendly to our eyes. So I went to the missionary Protestant school by accident, but I was raised with all friends who has been Catholic. So it's confusing us.
I'll bet. And then you have the history of the hidden Christians who, when all the missionaries were expelled for a couple of hundred years, some of them lived in hiding. It's a Sunday school class I've promised Coco I will do sometime.
300 years they're
Yeah,
hiding.
and they're practicing their faith, but they have no shepherd. And so when Commodore Perry sails into Tokyo Bay and Japan reopens itself to the world, which is when the Protestant missionaries start showing up,
But
the Catholics come back. Fellow goes to a church where worship had taken place, and a handful of Japanese come wandering in and say, your faith is also our faith. They had been practicing it for generations in hiding. The interesting, odd part about it is they had gone off the rails as far as traditional Catholic teaching went. I say they had no shepherd. They just kind of did things their own way. In fact, when invited back into the Catholic Church by those missionaries, said, no thanks, we're just going to keep being Japanese Christians. And,
They have both. They went to the Catholic and they say that.
some just said, forget that. Yeah, very, very interesting.
The Bible of the hidden Christians.
Oh yeah, and in fact, I read it at home. It's pretty short,
Yeah.
and it has. Have you read it?
Yeah.
It's got some bizarre stories.
Yeah.
Really bizarre. You can see connections to some of our biblical accounts, but they are very, very different. So yeah, as part of that class, I will build that in. Yeah, thanks. That's a great point. And you can see exactly, it's in a microcosm, John, sort of what happened. Okay, we got these stories, but they've taken away our Bibles, they've taken away our teachers. Let's put down what we remember and use it as our sacred text. And it's not very long. Yes?
So we know like a lot of the lepers had left their families and they were isolated. But what about St. Damien's family? Did he have any?
He had a brother, yeah, but the brother was the one that was supposed to go to Hawaii and got typhus, and Damien subbed in for him. And yeah, his mother and father, he was, I don't know how old he was when they died. They were dead when he died, I think. But yeah, you really don't hear any more about him other than the brother's role in getting him inspiring him into the priesthood.
Was the biography before or after St.
After, yeah. Yeah, the one I recommended. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that will get him through sainthood.
It's like such a good example of how, or contrast between, when Christ came along, one of the things that he drew stark contrast in was, kind of the Pharisees and the people and the followers of the law and everything. And then, hey, you guys are missing the spirit of the thing. And you become so married to the law that you've lost,
Yeah.
The spirit. And it seems a perfect analog or parallel to that.
That was clearly the stick that Stevenson was poking Hyde
Yeah,
with.
he did a good job.
You're living the high life. And he was doing good things, but as an administrator, not as a co-sufferer,
Right.
which is the real key to Damien. Oh, good point. Those things still happen today, yeah.
Yes, they did.
I read a little bit about leprosy in anticipation of this class.
Aha.
And you may know this, but armadillos can carry it.
I do. I'm aware of that. I don't shake hands with them. Although when I see them, they get up and want to.
The World Health Organization says that there are 200,000 new cases every year in the world. The southeast of the U.S. has the majority of the cases, especially Florida. And it's curable now.
Yeah.
Takes about a good 6 months or more with antibiotics and a host of other pharmaceuticals.
So, Dr. John, am I remembering most of what we call leprosy is Hansen's disease?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank can't remember what the treatment for it is, but there's a single antibiotic that's used.
Okay. Well, that's good news. But not in Damien's day.
And it's spread, I think, through respiratory, coughing, sneezing. droplets.
I don't doubt that.
Chris, there was a colony on the River Road between Baton Rouge.
Oh, this is our LSU boy.
Yeah. A colony at Old Plantation on the River Road between Baton Rouge and New Orleans.
Okay.
I've been to the gates of it until I realized on a tour.
We're not going to let us in.
Tours.
Huh? Anybody see the Steve McQueen movie Papillon?
Yes.
You may remember he's in dire straits, having escaped the island prison that he was on, and he encounters a colony of lepers, and they're trying to decide, well, do we just off this guy or do we help him? And the head leper is smoking a cigar and with the fingers that he has left, and he offers it to him, and he knows he better take it if he's going to have any credibility with these guys. And so he does, and he puffs on it, and the guy says, "How did you know that I did not have the contagious form of leprosy?" He says, "I didn't." So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, right. Dustin, exactly right. Dustin Hoffman was his sidekick. Yeah, good movie.
Chris, thanks for a great story.
Oh, it's one. Yeah. No, it's his story. Yeah. And next week we get another amazing one.